Thank you. Okay. So I am Patty Engstrom. I work for the Clearing with Chris McGoff. Just to lay the groundwork, you guys get ready for this because we don't know what's going to come out of these two. I've been given a tough job. I'm just saying that. We've heard a lot today about change, about the disruptors, how it can be disorienting, it can be overwhelming. The panel here, we've got Chris Hood and Chris McGoff. If I was one of those millennials, I'd come up with a cute hashtag like Chris Squared or something like that. But they are going to talk about what doesn't change. And that is that the anchor to any workplace design project is the voice of the customer, the voice of the user. So we will start with Chris Hood offering his perspective on who that customer is, what that user is, and turn it over to Chris McGoff. So.
Thanks, Patty. Some of you may have noticed that as the day has gone on, I've started stripping off. I took my jacket off, I took my tie off, but I'm not going as far as a TV program I watched in the UK last week. And this is not just an irrelevant anecdote. Hopefully you'll see a connection. But what happened was there were three scenarios. There was a woman who was a clothes designer. There was three students and then another couple. And the program said, you have to give up everything. You have to give up everything in your house. You have to give up all your clothes, every single stitch of clothes, and we're going to put them in a container 450 meters from your home. And then each day, for 21 days, you get to go back and pick up one item. And it was obviously quite funny, because the first day they were stark bollock naked, running down the streets, trying to get to the container so they could get some decency, which is what they selected. And then they started selecting different things. So there was a large variety about the things that they found were important to them. And that's the metaphor, in a sense, for what I'm going to talk about, which is we all have different thoughts about what we find is important, attractive, necessary. And so with that in mind, I'm going to talk from an end customer experience perspective. In this particular case, my definition is the user of office space. And I'm going to start by talking about a paper I wrote a couple of years ago on co-working centers. And in that, and the thrust of the paper was that there's some great lessons to be learned from co-working centers for the enterprise environment. The fact is that people make choices. The fact is that there is a sort of sense of community and belonging that is extraordinary, and much of this is actually missing in the sort of sterile corporate environment. And so if one thinks about it in those terms, one is seeing, as Melissa said, a true market condition. So imagine I'm paying $400 a month for a co-working center. That's, in very crude terms, that's $4,800 a year occupancy cost. There are a lot of organizations that would love to have $4,800 a year in occupancy cost per person. There are some that do better than that, but not a lot. And the point is, in a co-working center, you actually have something you like, that you've elected, as opposed to something you may not like and be paying twice as much for. So there's lots of reasons to look at co-working centers in a sort of very constructive way. And if you think about what co-working centers, the way they represent themselves, you're not looking at $500 chairs, for example, or $2,000 desks. You're looking, again, back to this notion of what do you find the most valuable and productive. You may be looking at the best coffee in the world. You may be looking at the comradeship of people around you who are prepared to give up their lunch to review a presentation that you're giving to an important client tomorrow. These are the things that the corporate world is sort of needs to start thinking about, how do I build community? How do I draw people in a way that's engaging? And this will become sort of apparent in a moment to you. But this is actually from the paper, but this is the only slide that, or the only piece that really matters here is that exponential growth of co-working centers. And actually, since I did the paper, I've had to add that column on the right. And I just heard, I think it was in the New York Times yesterday, that they're talking about 20,000, 20,000 in the US by 2020. So this thing just continues to skyrocket. And when I was writing the paper, I was actually thinking that what co-working was doing was actually drawing people away from home working, from having small offices either on their own or with small groups of people, or from the Reguses of the world, that was actually the market. And then what I came to find out was actually it's not like that at all. It's the market, or the number of people who are candidates for co-working is growing exponentially because they're actually leaving the enterprise world. And this was a discussion that was sort of embarked upon a little bit earlier today. And it's this notion of, today the organizations are sort of managing people, and they've got lots of them, and they're there full time. And, I've been space planning for, way too long, 40 years now. And it used to be that you'd go and get your headcount projections, and then there was this sort of funny little number of about 10% or less who were people, contractors, people who didn't need desks. It was always a bit of a rounding error. But now, Nancy, I've got some more numbers from you. Intuit did a research program 2020. They predicted there would be 40% of the population by 2020. And then I bounced that number off the head of HR of a very, very large technology company and said, what do you think about that number? And he said, I think it's very, very conservative. I think it's more likely to be over 50%. So think about that. Now, from programming buildings to thinking about who your audience is, 50% of them are not permanent employees, but they're presumably employees you need when you need them. So you've got half this population, you've got this sort of dynamic where you've moved from managing people to managing work. So you've got a smaller group of people managing the activities of a larger group of outsourced, contracted, individual people. It's the Boeing model, if you like. The Dreamliner was not built all by Boeing people. It was built by a group of people within Boeing organizing thousands of suppliers to produce bits and pieces and bring the thing together. So let's think about that for a moment. And this is the provocation I want to make to all of you today, which is think about those two constituencies. Think about somebody who I'm hiring for a project or to do a particular piece of work, maybe on a sort of periodic basis. And they're good, and I want them to come back. So what have I got to do in terms of services, space, atmosphere, in this environment to draw them back? And obviously, it's not just a physical space thing. It's how are they treated? Are they treated like ordinary employees? Are they treated more specially? How do we create a proposition that says, as a contractor, boy, I'm hoping the phone rings from those guys because I really like working for them. I like the work. I like the way I'm treated. And I want to come back, and I want to engage with those people. So that's the one constituency. The other constituency is the people who are arranging the work. So how do I treat them? Do I treat them differently? Do I treat them the same? Is there one sort of set of values that's pervasive? So in a sense, that's the provocation that I want to put to you, is the fact that we all have choices, that there are some compelling reasons why this sort of new organization is a good idea and also a bad idea. From the organization's perspective, you may say, crikey, that's a workforce I can just get rid of at will. I'm only paying for when I'm getting value. That sounds like a pretty good deal. I also get out of paying benefits and compensation for these people. Sounds like a good deal all around, as long as I can get the laborer when I need it. From an employee's perspective, one might say, wow, this is a good deal. There's a marketplace emerging out there where I can go and get work that suits me. I can take a month off in the summer and not worry about it. I just sort of delay my search for the next piece of work. So that sounds like a pretty good deal. But, you know, how do I get benefits? How do I guarantee where the next job is going to come from? It's those uncertainties of being either a small company or a single contributor. So we need to think about those things in the context of this world. But this stuff is happening. And the important piece is this 50% of the population or more, these are the people who are using co-working centers. So that slide I showed you before of the exponential growth is not that they're just taking a greater market share from sort of home working and Regis. This is a growing population who needs somewhere to work and understands the value of the community, and this is a choice over just, say, working from home on your own. So that's the proposition. I'm going to be quiet and let you tell me I'm all wrong or all wet or something.
No. I would never do that with someone with your accent. Where's our Bitcoin rock star that we had lunch with? I can't see him out here. Can you? I think the reason is because he brought his plate. How do you pronounce his name?
Oh,
Regnar?
Ragnar.
So he comes to our table. We're having lunch together.
Yeah.
He comes to our table with a plate, and we made sure he couldn't eat any of his food because we were like, all right, what's the deal with Bitcoin? How's it really work? And I'm going to go buy some because of how he explained it to us.
Yeah.
So here's how he started. I have no idea how he started. It went completely over my head, and we're like, okay, but could you take that down a little bit for us? He's like, well, okay, it's like this then. And I said, okay, it's not real, it's digital, and it hedges on real currency, real gold, real things. Yeah. And I can buy some, and there's only a limited amount, 21 million, right?
Right.
21 million, and I can buy some of that, and it'll go up. And even if it stays flat, remember we were happy, you were there, right? Guy couldn't eat for anything. We're like, okay, now how's this part work? How's this part work? So he's probably out there eating. So he finally realizes he's talking to a guy from Scranton, Pennsylvania, knuckle-dragging, mouth-breathing Irishman, and he goes, let me put it this way. It's like the miners when they mined gold. Now, I'll paraphrase. He says, there's only so much gold in the earth. And miners go down and get it, and they bring it out and bring it into the market, and that changes the supply, and then demand is on it, and those two things create the value. That's like Bitcoin. How? And he said, well, there's a really complicated set of math equations that take huge computer power to authorize the allocation of what has not been allocated yet of the 21 million. Only 17 million are allocated.
Right.
And it's this really hard computer program. And the people who can figure that out, well, they're called the Bitcoin miners. And that's basically they go into the algorithm and they bring out some Bitcoin every now and then. So just think of them as miners. They're like, oh, I get that. I'm from Scranton. We mine coal. I get that completely. And he said, and at the end, there's only so much gold in the earth. Well, there's only 21 million Bitcoins. Oh, I got that too. And I understood Bitcoin perfectly because it's no different than anthracite coal, which is what my grandfather mined. No different. Not at all. So what I wanted to ask you was this. All this change, I'm overwhelmed. The stuff that I was hearing today, everything. So are my clients. My clients are very senior leaders, and they have P&L. They're my clients. They have P&L. I try to do business with no one else because I'm not sure anyone else really matters in business. P&L is always going to matter, and there's always somebody who is being paid to manage that. And I try to find them and do business with them. First of all, they have access to a lot of money, and that's good for my company. And second, they're the most serious people you can do business with, and everybody else usually works for them. So what I wanted to ask you was this, and they get overwhelmed by all this technology that they're still losing money on. Not a person has gotten a return from information technology yet. Nobody has gotten positive return. I think you said it's a negative return. This is frightening, the amount of cash we're pumping into these things. And these P&L men, they're getting nothing out of it except headaches. So I just wanted to kind of not discount, I just want to add some flavor to this thing. How does life actually occur? This is what we start with the first day of the Graduate School of University of Maryland's Information Technology degree. This is how we start. We say, how does life actually occur? So how does life actually occur? Does it occur like this? Where, oh wow, that's a surprise. Oh wow, that's a surprise. Look at that, that's new. That's new. Holy cow. Occur like that? Or does it occur like that? So Bitcoin's just, oh, it's like anthracite coal. Oh, cloud is just like host. There's nothing new. I had a quote for you. I'll try to quote it. There was this time on earth when things were really working. It was 300 BC. The king's name was Solomon. He's writing to David, his son. He's old. He's under a tree. And what does he say, for those of you who know it? Vanity, vanity. All is vanity. There's nothing new under the sun. Everything that is, has been, and everything that will be, has been. Now, he's right or wrong. Solomon was right or wrong when he wrote Ecclesiastes. I'm 58. I've been a consultant now for 34 years. I'm with him. My number one job is to find the analogy. In anything new, what's the analogy? What's the thing that we can understand that helps us understand this thing? Because there's nothing new. Nothing. They were pretty impressed when they got that fire thing going, and they said, this is going to change everything. And then the good people used it to make meat, the bad people used it to kill each other. Same with nuke, same with everything. It's the same. Technology is agnostic. It's just what the people want to do from their hearts. So I just thought I could share a couple of things that executives are responding to when I say, as people bring all this new stuff to you, test it against these two things. Just test it against these two things. The first thing is stop asking anyone inside your box, whether they work for you or not, those people that you call, the staff that does things for you, stop asking their opinion. That's a very dangerous place to go. First of all, they've been nurtured way too much. They've been idolized, and they're used to being asked their opinion, and they're going to give it to you, and you're going to have to do something with it, or they're going to be mad at you. Because all they do is consume your money. They don't give you money. They consume your money. Stop asking them. What we want to do is we want to start with where all successful businesses start. What is the gap in the marketplace that we are fulfilling, and who specifically are our prospects? Who are our customers? Our company's customers. Who are they? And what do they need that they're not getting? And what monetary value will they place on that if we give it to them? And everyone in the company needs to know that. And then we need to design 5 things, 5 different things around that criteria. It doesn't matter what our people think. It doesn't matter what our CEO thinks. It doesn't matter what anybody thinks, because that never works. We're consulting in Sand Hill right now. We're down here in Andreessen Horowitz's portfolio with all these Twitters and Lyfts and all these companies. Let me tell you, I work in Washington, I work there, same dynamics. Nothing's different at all. Everybody thinks it's different because there's dogs running around and pool tables and ping pong tables. I tell people, don't go near those things. If you go near those things, there's a P&L person somewhere here that's not going to like you. Now, the people around you are going to say, it's cool, it's hip, here's a T-shirt. But there's a P&L person up there, and they look down, they're like, okay, that guy plays too much pool, fire him. It's never going to change. And they all go, oh yeah, we know that. We wouldn't go near that. It's weird what's happening. It's very, very weird. This is like an acid trip we're on out here. Overcapitalized by a few big hits, Netscape, Google, a couple others, pushed all the cash into the market. And you can do anything. This cash is hiding everyone's sins. And that cash is going to dry up. And it dries up on these portfolio companies pretty quick. And that's where we come in. So I just want to share a couple. This is it. This is all I got. So what we have to do is we have to line up 5 things. And you guys are responsible for a big one of these things. But the first thing is, first we have to say, what is the customer's unmet needs? Now we're going to line up 5 things in our company to make sure we deliver that better than anyone else. And we don't care what anyone else's opinion is. It's about external value creation. The first thing is our budget. We're going to prove that the customer's the most valuable. When you look at our budget, you're going to see us spending money on what's most important to producing external value. That's the first thing we're going to do. Number 2, our org structure. We're going to design it so that everyone in this company understands the person with the loudest voice is the person who understands that customer the most. And what they think is what matters in this company more than what anyone else thinks. More than what anyone else thinks. And you got to get it. And I don't believe there's any difference between millenniums and all the old people. They all respond the same way to this message and they like it. The third thing is we got to design the physical structure so that when you walk in, you know we're serving customers. When you walk in the door and move through our system, you know where our value is placed. Externally is where we produce our value. The fourth thing we're going to align exactly to make sure everyone's clear on what we're doing here, which is external value creation for money we get, is the incentive system. And the last thing is the culture. We refuse to look internally. We only do internal things as a function of problems we're having delivering external value. Now, when I look back in history and across my entire consulting time, that is what causes peak performance. Complete focus on external value creation, massive intimacy about those customers, and a disregard for the internal feelings of the company. A complete disregard for it. And guess what happens? Guess what happens? Old people, young people, everybody, guess what happens? A joyous noise is made because we live to serve. People live to serve. And when you take this focus, you access that. And everybody responds the exact same way. I would never, you know this, I don't even go to internal. How often am I internal in the company? I hate going there. There's no money there, and there's only complaints. If I ever asked my staff what they thought of our work, I don't even want to look at you.
Let's not go there during this panel.
Yeah. Because there's no money there. So that's all I got. 5 things have to be synchronized. They all have to be synchronized around one criteria. And I don't know if you work with the facilities people, if you work with all those people, they actually don't matter as much. There's somebody in there that's got that P&L, and they know exactly what I'm talking about, and so do you, because many of you own your own businesses. This idolization of employees is crazy, and it's got to stop. I was at Google 2 days ago. What a mess. If they didn't make so much cash, I mean, how long does a Google employee last at Google? All the food, the pool tables, the ping pong, all that stuff, the shirts, everything. How long do they last? Less? Yeah, they're lasting between 9 months and 11 months. Why do we idolize them? And I'm an owner-operator. And we have pretty heavy retention.
We do.
People don't leave the company. They're what's noble and mighty externally, not internally.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you all. Okay, I see some hands already in the audience, but first I want to give Chris Hood a chance to react and respond since he went first.
So that told us. So what I think is interesting about that is firstly, this millennial conversation. I think people want to be successful, and what you described was success, ultimate success. But people, I asked my son, who's 32 years old, I said, what's a job for you? What do you like about a job? I like being told I did a good job. That for him was really important. And I think what's interesting about this world of co-working centers, of a large and growing entrepreneurial crowd is this passion for success that you just described.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's where the energy is. I think that's what makes it all go. I think that's why people are prepared to share ideas and thoughts and experiences, because they know they don't know all the answers, but they're actually seeking places to get them. So I think what we're seeing is the sort of anti-corporate piece where I can actually control my world, my experiences, and I think that's very consistent with what you just said there, actually. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's go to the audience. Who has questions? I see back in the back there.
Yeah. I had a blind piano tuner come to my house recently, and he was tuning the one string, and then he'd go up a little bit and go back and tune. I said, "You just tune that string." I wasn't paying him by the hour, but I was just curious. And he said, "Well, every time I tune, if I start here and I tune these strings, I pull on the harp. So if I tune this string perfect, and then I go up here and tune 6 more strings and tighten them, this one goes out of tune." So he just goes back and forth until it's tuned. Same with these 5 things. They have to be brought into resonation together, and it's not easy. It takes a long time. Here are the 5 things, and you guys know them. Sing along. Hey, the budget. I should look at the budget and see my priority as customers. Period. It should be perfectly clear. I should look at the org structure and see the person reporting to the most power are the people who care the most about the customers, because that's where the money's coming from. Number 3, the workplace design. When I walk into it, I should see the customer experience immediately. The whole place should be designed around customers, not around staff. Staff is a cost. Training's a cost. The incentive system. The people who get paid the most are the people directly contributing to incremental and quantum customer value creation. The rest of the people, just a job. Help us out. Go away. Culture. Screw with our customers, we screw with you. I mean, you should feel it when you walk in. This culture is aligned to our customers, not to you. Because if we do that, if we do those 5 things, we can take care of you. We can take care of our staff. You focus on staff, you lose staff. You focus on customers, you win customers, and you can take care of your staff. Did I answer that question? You can have this. I'll give you this. The 5 strings, you got to tune them all the time. Make them sing.
Okay, Tom?
Well, in my past, I've been an outsourced service provider and had a P&L, have since gone to the light and worked direct for companies providing those same services. However, I found that I still manage the team and the service like I have a P&L. And are there ways that those people, those of us in organizations, can get that mindset around our people, our solutions, our offerings?
How do you do that? How do you get the crowd connected to P&L and thinking that way? When did it become so bad?
Yeah. Get them to share in success.
Right. Hook them into it.
Yep.
But not with options, real cash.
Right. Yeah.
Give them cash if you make cash.
Yep.
And how old is that idea?
Yeah.
I mean, sharecroppers.
Couple of thoughts. One, it seems to me that any internal organization can think of itself as a customer-facing organization. Your customers may be other people inside the organization, but there are, I can't cite a specific example, but I know there are instances of chargeback systems and ways in which people actually are treating an internal organization like a P&L. Literally, it can be measured that way. But the question I wanted to ask you, Chris, was how do you reconcile what you've been saying about the voice of the customer, the importance of the customer, with the notion that Clay Christensen introduced about the innovator's dilemma, that you can get too close to your customers and not innovate and offer things that they don't even know they want. A lot of the mentality in Silicon Valley, and you probably know this better than I do, is to build a better product and the world will come to your door rather than go out and do market research, because people can't ask for things they've never seen. So
Yeah.
could you talk about that a
Oh,
little
man,
bit?
one of the biggest tragedies in D.C., you go down there at night and there's a basketball court and there's some kid 5'11" shooting baskets instead of studying. You say, what are you doing? I'm going to be in the NBA. And you say, no, you're not. Oh, yeah, look at all those guys in the NBA. No, there's about 240 guys in the NBA and there's about 8 billion of you. And unless you're 6'8", you're not going near it. Well, it's the same as these guys, the Googles that grab this big, you know, we built this thing even though the market didn't want it because we introduced it. That's like this much of business. It costs $100 million to pull one of those off. Very rare it's ever going to happen. Yeah, the damn glasses and stuff.
Examples of companies developing products that the market didn't know it wanted until it got it.
Why behave like something that has infinite money when you don't have infinite money? Google has infinite money. They have infinite money. Apple has infinite money. I don't have infinite money. I can't go to a customer and say, I know that you have an itch that you don't know you have, but I'm going to scratch it for you. That's Google. That's Apple. That's the NBA. I have to say, are you itchy at all anywhere that I can scratch? And they say, yeah, I have an itch right here. And I say, okay, I'll scratch that for you for 10 bucks. I don't have any money. I'm 5'10". I don't have any money. We're all trying to be Google when Google has infinite money. I can't introduce anything the market doesn't want. I can't. I've tried. I'm not.
There are a lot of examples of other than Google and Apple that have done that.
Yeah, but for me, it's tiny. I mean, we all look at them like we can do it, but I can't. I've tried. Maybe somebody has anybody in here ever introduced anything that the market didn't want and all of a sudden it wanted because you introduced it? Okay, sample here, 0. And this is a smart crowd. I mean, Kay, you were right. It's a smart crowd here. I'm not trying to be, do you know anybody that invented a mousetrap, a new one, and brought it to the world? The world was like, well, I didn't think I wanted that, but I want 4.
Well, I like to think I did.
Well, tell them about it.
Well, so many years ago, we walked around offices and found out that nothing, that people were disappearing. The enabling qualities of technology were driving people to work everywhere. We know that story. But 20 years ago, or maybe it wasn't quite that much, but it was 15 years ago, we said, well, let's try and measure it. And so we put sensors. You know, I worked with Herman Miller. Actually, I worked with HP Labs to develop the sensors that went under chairs that began to measure that in very, very sort of accurate levels. The market didn't know that it needed that source, but it was certainly very grateful for the information flow. And since then, of course, we're censored to death with, you know, all over the place.
Yep.
But that kind of felt good.
Yeah,
that felt good. But it was not that we needed to invent that particular product. We just needed to try to understand what was going on around us. So
They knew they needed the data.
Yeah, exactly.
And you found a sensor.
Yeah, built a sensor.
Yeah.
Right.
So they had the itch, though.
They
wanted the data.
Yes. Well, once you had the data, the power of that data to help people make decisions, which they would never do before. What they were doing is they were basically denying information because of, you know, we've been talking about change here, and data and information is really powerful in sort of overturning skepticism and doubt.
Yes.
So we're all in this mode now. We're all searching for different ways to find data to support views that we hold or we think is the right direction.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, with dashboards are red hot right now. All my clients want dashboards. And I think I'd probably back where you were. I say, well, I don't know, dashboards, like, depends what do you want to know?
Yeah.
What's the itch? You tell me what the itch is, we'll go build a little dashboard to scratch your itch. But if you send me off to build a dashboard right now without telling me what your itch is, I'm just going to go build a lot of fancy gauges that are just going to confuse you.
Yep.
And confuse me, but you're going to pay a lot for it.
Well, I think you're highlighting a larger issue, which is when you go and ask organizations questions about the future, they find it very difficult to answer. They really do.
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
they will go and, if it's a conversation about space, they come to you with a 6-month projection for headcount, and they have no idea, by the way, about all the contracted labor, because that goes through procurement, not HR. And so that's the end. That's the end of the conversation. And so, but what work are you going to be doing in 5 years' time that you're not doing now, and vice versa? They honestly haven't a clue. It's really difficult
Not a clue.
to get executives today to look forward.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing. It's pretty blind out there.
Yeah.
And they're brave people, and they're wonderful. All those little people in your box thing, you had those 4 people down below, and then all that mass up there.
Yeah.
I'll bet nobody in here does business with that mass.
Right.
They do business with the people that own. Doesn't somebody in here own 3 of those?
Yeah.
Some lady over here owned 3 of those shared workplaces.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
You probably do business with her. But you don't do
Yeah.
business with all those people hanging out in there.
Right.
They
Right.
might use your stuff, but they don't give you money.
Right.
She's your customer. They're just necessary. I don't know what they are. But they don't count. She counts. Because she writes the check.
So I've got a question for the audience here. Are you seeing this sort of I won't say miniaturization, but they're getting smaller of the big enterprise, this sort of reliance on outsourced staff, contracted labor, people brought in for projects? Is that a myth? Are you seeing it?
Yeah, that's how people
Yeah.
are starting to get things done.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I have a question on that. I know Boeing, when it wants to build something big, it says, because he's right on that, let's get everybody in here who can build the thing. I don't care if I own them or not, because as soon as this thing's done, I got to make them go away, because they're a
Yeah.
cost to me. But I own a small consulting company. It'll be the 3rd time we go through a liquidity event. And every time we're valued, this is the 3rd one, the buyer comes and says, well, how many are W-2s and how many are 1099s? Because we're going to novate all the 1099s because they're not coming with the sale. So a lot of America runs on people like me who own businesses, mostly service businesses, accounting firms, doctor offices, small consulting firms, 200 people, 300 people. We want as many W-2s as we can get. We don't want 1099s. The minute we have a 1099, we're like, how can we turn them into a W-2? Now, I know that that's not the marketplace, but I'm just saying if you're going into a liquidity event, and most people who own small businesses are on their way to a liquidity event, and anyone in services wants them all W-2s and locked in as tight as possible, because the acquirer is going to say, hey, if 50% of your staff is 1099s and your company's valued at 40 million, I'll give you 20, because they're not coming. So I don't think we have a 1099 right now, do we?
Maybe like a handful
Yeah.
for specific projects.
Specific projects, maybe, but out of 70 or 67 of them, 65, 64 of them are W-2s. Now, I just wanted you to know that part of the world exists too.
Yeah.
Anybody going into liquidity doesn't want contractors because they novate them. That might not be your customer base, but most of business is more like me than like Boeing. Most of the country's workforce is in 100-person, 200, 300, 400-person companies run by lunatics like me. But we need you.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the point that I don't think that W-2 is the means of attachment that it was previously, and the cultural relationship, although it may not be what is technically valued in a valuation, can be much more powerful, and I think we need to be thinking about what are we doing to substantiate the relationship above and beyond what might be the technical requirement, and how is that driving the power of our business?
I think retention is a function of giving people opportunities to live significant lives by creating value externally. I think retention is a function of giving people opportunities to create value externally. I really do. It's the only thing I was able to figure out. Ask them about their desk or chair. 2 days later, half the people aren't happy.
I was really more connecting it to the W-2 topic than the workplace topic.
Right, but are you asking how to retain W-2s?
No, I was saying that it is just a factor of the technical
Oh, yeah.
into liquidity, the connection between you and the people who work for you is substantiated in entirely different ways.
Right, but everybody in my genre is moving to liquidity. I mean, you would never do this nutsy thing unless you were going to try to monetize it, somehow. I mean, I know what you're saying, but I think every owner, you give them the right price, that thing's gone.
But I think that's exactly what we're talking about, is an economy that is changing the purpose of being in business from a liquidity event to making the world a better place.
Yeah, that's what we say, but the owners don't think it.
Yeah, I mean, Google scrapped "Do no evil" as a tagline
Right.
3 years ago, right?
Right.
So yes, things change and go in either direction, but I think it's an important topic for workplace, that there is this shift between the two categories.
But I think all these young people are seeing through our veil of nonsense. I think young people are just like anybody else. They pretty much understand what's going on. I think everybody understands our company's always for sale. I mean, it's a kind of risky environment we're in. We're trying to treat our employees straight up. Straight up. Nothing. I'll tell you something. I was concerned about trying out these millennials. I thought, oh, they must be different. I have 6 kids. I lived with them. I raised them up. They're 32, 30. I don't know what I get in trouble when I name their ages because it's not a good place for me to go. But I can tell you that I don't see them much different than I see my dad and my granddad and everybody else, unless I say to them, how are you different? They're like, oh, we're different in all Spotify. I'm like, who cares? But they want the same things I want. But I went up to Harvard to that guy. What's his name? The guy that's been asking for 40 years, most tenured professor at Harvard. Howard Gardner. So I had to run this company. I thought, I better go learn how to have these people work for me. So he's been asking for, 40 years, what makes good work, right?
Yeah.
So he asked this whole gang of young people all around the world. So I went up. He sits on a ball in his office, and he's mean. He's really crotchety. And he didn't want me there. And I had a couple of minutes with him. It was like being with God. It's like, oh, wow. I said, how's it work? And he goes, they want 3 things, and they're not in order. They're not in order. They want all 3 of these things. It's like a 3-legged stool. You got to do all 3. I said, what are they? And he said, well, they actually believe what their parents said. Life is short. Make good use of it. They actually believe that. They want opportunities to contribute significantly to the world. They want their lives to be significant. You have to provide that. I said, okay. Let's do that. Let's dare noble and mighty things for these people. Give them a platform to do that on. What's the second thing? He said, excellence. They use the iPad or iPod, or whatever it was, because they can get to any of 5,000 songs in a few clicks. It's perfectly designed. They don't use it because it's Apple. They'll throw it away if they can find something more excellent. Their allegiance is to excellence. And if they walk in the door and you hand them some cheap computer, they're like, oh, oh. I said, what's the third thing? And he said, integrity. If you're a tobacco company, say you're a tobacco company. Just don't lie to them. They don't want an end run. So they want an opportunity to live significantly, they want excellence as a value, and they want integrity. We say what we do and do what we say. He said, you build a company around those 3 things, and they'll come and they'll stay. And I thought, well, that's what I want.
Yeah.
Isn't that what everybody?
Yeah. Well, I think the interesting thing about that example, Howard Gardner, is that he also developed the theory of multiple intelligences, which is saying that the way into people's minds is different, that there are different channels that people react to. And so, I think this community sitting in front of us is sort of thinking about that. I think they're thinking about what are the ways. We don't all receive information. We don't always react to the same stimuli in the same way. What are the ways that we can create to allow people to ingest information, articulate it, play it back to people in a really productive way?
Yeah.
And I think that's the challenge we all face every day with thinking about the larger, broader subject of workplace.
Right. I think there's people in this audience, as a matter of fact, who think a lot about this. The special needs, the special type of needs we have, our ability to focus in a lot of chaos versus a lot of, chronic distraction syndrome. I mean, that's a really important conversation to have.
Yeah.
And I think there's experts right here in that right now. I'm not one.
Yeah.
But I know that we have a moral responsibility to do that.
Right.
And I haven't read enough of his work on that yet.
Yep.
How important do you think that is in this day and age with all the Ritalin and all this stuff pumped into these kids that are coming into our companies?
Well, I think it's critical. I was actually involved with him in helping to design a school for, I won't say special needs. These are just kids who didn't fit into the traditional school system. They took information in a different way. Very bright, many of them, but they just didn't survive in the typical state school system. But under special tutelage, understanding that these different channels into people's mind, they could excel. My daughter was a perfect example of that. She absolutely failed miserably at school, but she found her passion in the kitchen. And she's now working in a restaurant in New York that was adjudged 2 weeks ago as the 3rd best restaurant in the world. And she's sitting there shoveling, you know, just absolutely controlling this kitchen. And we never even thought she'd find a job. So
You got to feel great about that.
no, I do feel great, but I think that's kind of a message for the workplace here, which is how can we help people to really find their passion, find the things that turn them on and help them be productive, and then just let them go, whether it's for, you know, on customer-based missions or something else. You know, I think there's a sense around this room also that people want to do meaningful work.
Yeah,
and,
I think that's big.
And, you know, we're all trying to create the Petri dish from which that will flower and blossom.
But you got to get the trifecta, right? You got to have somebody. There's a lot of passionate people who are completely incompetent and doing something that the customers don't need or want. That's not a good thing.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And then you got the passionate person who's competent about something the business doesn't need. That's not good either. And then you got the passionate person doing something about what the business needs but's incompetent. So you kind of need the three things.
Yeah.
And they can be really passionate people, fantastic at something, but we can say, you don't belong here. Like, I can never get Nordstrom to sell me a wheelbarrow, no matter how passionate I am about wanting one. They say they're customer focused. Well, clean my gutters.
All right.
You know.
Thank you. So I think we're at time.